This conference will now be recorded. This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, very good. Let's call the May meeting, the North Front Range Transportation and Air Quality Planning Council to order. Can I have, would you please join in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Let's do public comment. And I have a feeling that we're going to have public comments now. So please, members of the public, if you have a couple of comments, we say 2 minutes each, but as long as, Steve, you don't go to 20 or 30, I'll be leaving. Come on up, please.
I'll just keep that fine.
Okay.
Well, good evening. My name is Steve Keys, I'm Greeley, and it's good to be back to be able to talk to you all as short as as much as I can. First of all, I was wondering, these ride guides, which one would you like to have out in the community? The one that tells you little or more extensive? And the reason I'm asking this is because I'm on the Well County Mobility Council, and I've been trying to pass these out, and you guys made this. And the reason because we need to know on this side, the extensive, because we don't have as much as mobility and all that in this, and we don't have much over here to get the information out. So we need as much as possible, and I know this is the information from Well County and also Larimer County, and this doesn't say much except for maybe this goes in more detail of what, where, and how, and sometimes why. And I would like to be able to pass these out more. I used to read until you went to these, and I got this temporarily, and to get these out. I prefer these so people would know, especially on this side, but I'm sure Larimer County would appreciate the extensive information. Number two is that we do need more mobility on this side in Evans, Greeley, even the county as well, especially in the park. And I'm sure LaSalle would appreciate some help too. And I know that the funding, we discussed that, but if we're really serious, we could get some funding, even though we had to do a lot of research on trying to get to fill the gap of being able to get it around. And also that, let's see what else I have here. Oh yeah, and about the funding, is that the state and the feds, a lot of times in the last many years, Obama signed millions and many billions of dollars for transportation. Donald Trump did, President Biden, two or three of our governors have too. And I know you go to each entity, but I just know that maybe there's more out there than we already know. And plus, if we had good transportation transit, it would help cut down on the pollution, maybe help the ozone layer as well. I know east, Larimer County and west, Well County, and all the way down almost to Colorado Springs, that we've had problems with pollution in the ozone layer, and also the state is not too happy, and also the federal government. I just want to know that, we'd like to see that we have better transportation, transit, also to be able to pedestrian and biking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dietz. Additional public comment, please. Seeing none, let's move on to acceptance of the agenda. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to look that over. Chair would entertain a motion to accept the agenda, please. Oh,
So moved. Second.
motion been seconded, yes?
There is on your agendas, there is an item that we said was revised, but it didn't really get revised. We're not doing the presentation on the river trail tonight. FYI for everybody.
So we'll strike that and accept as amended, if that's okay with you.
Accept as amended, yes.
Second. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries and is accepted as amended. Excuse me. Number 2, approval of minutes. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to look over both the lead, the planning agency for air quality NPO minutes from April 6, 2023. Any additions or corrections to those minutes?
I mean, it's spelled wrong in one of those.
Who's the speller? Have they got, is it a P or?
I think it's an EN, but, I don't know about where, anyway. Otherwise, I approve move to approve the minutes.
Okay. Second. Motion and second to approve the minutes with the fixing of the commissioner's name, please. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, let's open the lead planning agency for air quality agenda. Reports. Number 3 is the Air Pollution Control Division report. That is a handout. Number 4, the Regional Air Quality Council. The RAC report is a handout. North Front Range NPO Air Quality Program updates. Fedora.
Thank you. Good evening, all. 2 quick updates for you tonight. The first is on the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program through the EPA. Wanted to make you aware that they're accepting applications for a planning grant right now, and we are not eligible to apply for that, so you're not doing that. But there is a second phase of the program, and that will be for implementation grants, and that will be announced later this year. For this planning portion, the state has accepted their award, and we will be covered under the state's plan. So we can work with the state, put forward our strategies that we might want to fund, and then we could apply when that $4.6 billion implementation grant program opens in about a year. So just wanted to make you aware of that upcoming funding opportunity. And then secondly, I wanted to note that FHWA currently has a public comment opportunity on the Buy America waiver provisions. And we have in the past awarded funds to projects that haven't been able to go forward because FHWA suspended their Buy America waiver program. So we could submit a comment from the council if directed to do so. Staff could do this, making suggestions to the waiver program. One suggestion is to use what the FTA uses for their requirements on Buy America. So I just wanted to put that forward to the council. The deadline for submitting comments is May 22nd. And I'll turn back to the chair.
Questions from Fedora, please. Thank you. Okay, let's open up the MPO portion of our agenda, please. Under reports, number 6 is a report of the chair. There was going to be a clean cut report in there. I didn't do it. Shooting you straight. So therefore, the chair has no report. Number 7 is executive director report, legislative update. Suzette, please.
Thank you. So in your handouts, there is a legislative report. I know we're getting close to the end of the session, and so things are kind of going fast and furious right now. But if you look, and I don't know exactly what page this is on, but in your handouts, the legislative report, there's a cover page, the bills that have been already signed and passed. And so that is 1014, House Bill 1014, which is concerning the yielding to large vehicles and roundabouts, that passed. 1101, which I think we've discussed in some detail here, which is supporting for transit in connection with increasing the flexibility for the ozone season. It also contained a portion about revisiting the boundaries, the TPR boundaries. So that did pass as well. House Bill 1123, concerning the requirement for motor vehicle drivers take certain actions to mitigate risk on their vehicles present as stationary vehicles on the road passed. And then 143, concerning the administration of existing retail delivery fees in connection, making a reduction in appropriation. So those are the ones that passed. The next one is the electric vehicle charging and parking requirements. And that is House Bill 1233. The last, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but it's requiring that the state electric board adopt rules facilitating EV charging at multifamily buildings, and a lot of that. But the important thing is to highlight in this bill, one of the changes that got added on the first was they updated the definition of disproportionately impacted communities to include mobile home parks, linguistically isolated communities, or located within either the Southern Ute or the Ute Mountain Indian Reservation. So that's one of the major pieces that I think will probably affect us more than anything. And then also the bridge and tunnel enterprise. I think we've talked about this one in the past. It's expanding the scope of the enterprise that they can include preventive maintenance work, as well as just going with the bridges that are in poor condition. Then we have Senate Bill 1016, which is a greenhouse gas emissions reduction measure. That's been going through the process as well. That changes the percent of reduction from 50% to 65% and so on. And then the last one, which I think has probably gotten a lot of play with a lot of people in this room, is 213. I know that it has had lots and lots and lots of amendments going back and forth. My understanding was that the last meeting on this to discuss this was Tuesday. That was the last I knew of it. There might have had more discussion. Apparently the Senate removed quite a bit of the language of what was in the bill. The House added some things back in. I'm not sure exactly what those things are, but it is still in the process. So, and then the 10-year transportation plan information, that's 268, and I think that one, it's looking like that one will pass. That's just giving some more transparency and reporting to the legislature about the 10-year pipeline projects that comes through CDOT. So that's what I have, and I know this is fast moving. It's probably way out of date already.
Look, you wrote it this morning, most likely. Questions for Suzette, please. Please.
I don't have a question, but I just want to say on 213, the one piece that went back in with the, in the House was the density around transit. So how they're defining that transit is it's either the fixed rail or buses with frequency of 15 minutes or less, and BRT, which I think is only in Fort Collins. So I think that's a piece that affects transportation a lot, because, and it remains to be seen whether that piece will be in it, but apparently they said that affects about 15 communities across the state. You know, I think it'll affect Fort Collins, but just along the max line, because we don't have a lot of routes that run every 15 minutes. But so that piece went back in, and it requires a certain amount of density in those within like a half a mile of that transit. Anyway, a lot of the other pieces are really more land use pieces.
Additional comments or questions, please? Okay, thank you, Suzette. Number 8 is the TAC report on page 15 that is written. 9 is the mobility report that is a handout that is written. 10 is our finance. That's on page 16, and that is written. And number 11 is the quarter 1, 2023 tip modifications. That is written as well. Any questions on any of the written reports? Okay. Striking the presentation, moving on to number 13, it's an action item. It's the April 2023 off-cycle tip amendment. The resolution is found on page 39. Anna Rose, please.
Thank you.
I'm not walking out on you. I'm getting the packet I didn't print.
I don't think there's a packet out there.
Nope.
Nope.
And I'm going to look over Suzette's shoulder. Can I do that?
All right, so the April 2023 off-cycle tip amendment includes one revision request from CDOT Region 4, adding the new project I-25 northbound and southbound to Diamond Bryant, Colorado 1 North, with $3.1 million federal and $329,000 state surface treatment funding. The 30-day public comment period for the April 2023 off-cycle tip amendment began on April 7th and will conclude on May 7th. And approval by planning council is contingent on no comments being received before that public comment period ends. An environmental justice analysis was included in your packet, and
At their meeting in April, the TAC recommended addition of the TIP amendment to the fiscal year 2023 to 2026.
Questions, John?
So I don't have that in front of me neither, but what was that? What was the location?
So it's, I have the specifics. It's about Colorado 1420. So they called it Colorado 1 North.
Wait, Colorado 1, that's what I'm saying, that's in Norfolk Range.
Right, but it is
State
from
Highway
about
14.
14 to our boundary, and then it extends beyond our boundary as well.
Additional patients, Savannah Rose, please. Okay, we will need a motion then, please, to, on page 43 of the packet that I don't have, resolution number 2023-08 of the North Front Range Transportation Air Quality Planning Council approving the April 2023 off-cycle amendments to the FY 2023 through 2026 Transportation Improvement Program. Here we're entertaining a motion to approve that, please.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second by the mayors over here, building mayors, to approve resolution 2023-08. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks, Santa Rose. Okay, number 14 is the FY 2024 through 2025 Unified Planning and Work Program. The resolution there is on page 44 of your packet, please. Thank you.
Good evening. As mentioned, this is for the FY 2024 to 2025 Unified Planning Work Program. TAC recommended that Planning Council approve the tasks within the UPWP at their April meeting, and the Finance Committee reviewed the 2024 budget because we only do 1 year at a time with the budget at their April meeting the next day. And they also recommended Planning Council approval of the budget. So we are asking for council to approve the combined UPWP of the tasks and the budget for FY 24. This was put out for, or open for public comments on April 12th, and that 30-day public comment period is through May 11th. And this is something that is, we've only done once before. We've been asked by FHWA and FTA to put UPWP out for public comment, so this is something that we are going to be doing from now on, but just to let everyone know that this is something that we have been requested to do. And no comments have been received to date, and we are requesting that Planning Council approve Resolution 2023-09, adopting UPWP pending no public comment at that time, similar to the TIP amendment.
Questions for Becky, please? Okay, if not, on page 45 of your packet, you'll find resolution 2023-09 of the North Front Range Transportation and Air Quality Planning Council approving the FY 2024 through 2025 Unified Planning Work Program tasks and FY 2024 budget.
So moved.
Second. Motion and second to approve resolution 2023-09. Further discussion, please. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Man, are we? We're on time. I don't know what to do. Anybody want seconds?
Almost 5 minutes late.
All right, thank you, Rick. For discussion items, number 15 is the North Front Range NPO 2050 RTP 10-year list of priorities. Becky, please.
And counted your chickens before they happened.
So it's me again, hello. So talking about a favorite topic, the 10-year list, which has now been renamed to the NFRMPO priority corridors. I will get to that in a few slides. But just some background and some history on this for those who are new to the council since 2019, 2020. In early 2020, CDOT headquarters, so statewide, developed a 10-year strategic pipeline projects to create a list of the state's top priorities with transportation projects, so non-motorized, roadway, transit projects, all in one list, in one place that would be prioritized so that whenever money would fall from the sky or become available, everyone would know what the next project or what the priority projects were for the state. And this is also to be incorporated into the STIP, or the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program, which is the state's version of the TIP. So in response to this request, the NFRMPO created its own list of priority projects on 6 Planning Council approved corridors, which are shown here on this slide, in the order that Council deemed that they were of importance at the time. So I-25, then US 34, US 85, US 287, State Highway 14, and State Highway 392. Now these are just 6 of our 27 regionally significant corridors. These were just the 6 most that rose to the top. And also fit the criteria that are shown here that the Transportation Commission had developed. So to be able to get projects onto the list, Planning Council looked at corridors within the RSCs that met these criteria the best, and those 6 were the ones that met that criteria. In January 2020, we held a workshop with TAC and Planning Council to look at a list of 57 projects that were brought together and compiled on these 6 corridors from the 2045 RTP, the US 85 and US 34 Pell studies, the Region 4 2018 ballot project list, so going really far back, and then from TAC and Planning Council members as well, for any projects that may have not been in any of those lists, but were coming up and were known. So that is where these projects originally came from. And this list has been updated twice since the 2020 list was created, once each in 2021 and in 2022. So looking at the projects that are on the list for CDOT's statewide 10-year plan, these are the projects that are within the North Farm Range MPO. And I would like to point out the columns there, that these are for FY 19 to 22, then 23 to 26, and then 27 and beyond. So we're talking out to through 2030, so the next year would be 2031. So the fiscal year 2031 would be the next time any projects and any additional funding would be available. So as you can see, there's a lot of projects that we have heard about a lot. So the Brook Mobility Hubs, the Terra Loveland Hub, Harmony Park and Ride, some I-25 projects, as well as US 34, and then the US 85 and 34 interchange, which is just up the road here. You will notice, or you may have noticed, segments 7 and 8 are not on this list, and that is because they are funded through other means. They are not a part of the projects being funded through the 10-year plan. So the changes to the North Front Range MPO's list. So change the name to the North Front Range MPO Priority Corridors list to better reflect the purpose of this list for the North Front Range MPO. We're not putting a time frame on it. We are not calling it a 10-year list or a 10-year plan. A 10-year plan insinuates that it will be funded within 10 years. And so what this is just a list of priorities of our priority corridors with the candidate projects. So we are saying, if money fell from the sky, look at these corridors, and here are the projects that we as the North Front Range MPO would like to have funded if you have money, CDOT to do so. The corridors are shown in the roadway list, so they are grouped by corridor, ranked in corridor priority, and I'll show that in just a moment. So everything that's 34 or 25 or 287, they are grouped together and shown that way. Transit and non-motorized are included on their own separate lists, but are not prioritized by corridor due to the small number of projects as well as the project size. It does not make sense to do that for those projects. And as I said, they are candidate projects. We're saying these are what our regional priorities are, but again, we are providing this list to CDOT, and then CDOT is taking these, and then they can fund them as they wish. This is not to say that the projects on this list are the only projects that will get funded. These are just for this specific pot of funding through CDOT. Any other project that we have in our RTP, any of those are eligible. That is the first box to check for any project that is applying for federal funds to be in a regional plan. So, never mind. Why update now? To ensure that our priority corridors continue to reflect our priorities and that our tier 1 projects are the ones that are still the highest on our list and the top priorities, and as well as to be incorporated by reference into the 2050 RTP. Here, which is very tiny.
Yeah, I got that.
Okay, zoom in. So what this shows by color here, so you can see this first one is US 34, and it lists 4 projects that are on US 34. So the candidate projects are County Road 3 to Centera, Rocky Mountain Avenue to Boyd, Lake Avenue, Denver Avenue to Boise, 34 and Wells County Road 17. And then the Greeley project that they requested, the staff requested to combine they wanted to combine into one, so US 34 and 35th to US 34 and 47. So then the next one is 34 and 85, then I-25, and there are 2 different I-25 projects, but one is an interchange and then one is I-25 itself. So they are separate now. So this is the new way that we are recommending to reflect the reasoning behind the list and to help avoid the confusion that I think there has been, because we've also heard from CDOT staff, what is the purpose of this list? What is this list telling us? What does it mean? So to help clarify that for everyone, calling it their NFRMPO priority corridors with candidate projects list. So a couple of questions. Are these 6 corridors still the priority corridors? Does the order of the priority still make sense? And does council concur with the new format of the list?
So one by ones, council, priority corridors. Are we still in relative agreement there? I believe so. Please.
Can I ask just a quick question? Did TAC weigh in on this too, right? And
Yes.
Did they feel like, did we have maybe it was in the notes?
So the priority corridors and the projects, they weighed in on. This new format is the result of a meeting that we had with CDOT staff. Actually, the day that the packet went out. So the new format of the list has not been seen by TAC, but the priority corridors, those have been seen by TAC. And projects that are on the list have also been seen by TAC, and they concurred. Yes, but ultimately it is your decision.
I'm curious. Please, Commissioner, go ahead.
I would say, how does that process then work with TAC from here? They haven't seen this yet. Will we provide input tonight and then you'll take it back to TAC? What is the sequence of events?
Yes, so we would take this back to TAC. The only thing, let's see if I do this correctly. Okay, there we go. The only thing that is different is this grouping and what this list is called. That is the only difference. They saw all of these projects, but they were listed individually, if that makes sense. So each one said 34, US 34, US 34, US 34. This is grouped together, but that is really the only difference. They were even in, I believe, the same order. But we can take it back to TAC. There really is no, Suzette and I were talking about, is there a rush to get this done? To change everything, and I believe the answer to that is no, that there isn't really a rush. It's just we want to include it by reference into the RTP, and so we can include the current one by reference, and without needing to do an amendment to the RTP, we can always change it to this.
Suzanne.
Go ahead if you were going to elaborate on it. I'm trying to understand the sequence of events, because it seems like this is a very important list, but it's going to be very meaningful when it comes to CDOT. And so I'm trying to understand how is it going through a full vetting process through the communities and through the TAC and through the council before it shows up on CDOT's doorstep.
So the community vetting, we didn't do that when we did the first one. This was all council and TAC that said, we've gone through the vetting when we did the long range plans and said, here's the projects and the corridors that were in there. Prioritizing them was coming from the council and the TAC and putting them in some order. And that, as Becky said, is in response to the direction of getting that 10-year plan in place. But I think, and I'm looking at you specifically, because I think the other purpose of that plan was to give us a sort of a rallying point about what is that project or corridor that you all want to advocate for. So if somebody says to any council member or to me, what's the priority in your front range if you got money? What is that priority? For a long time, it's been I-25. to I-25 is now getting sort of knocked off the list. So what is that priority? And I think, and I know you've been a great advocate for us at the Transportation Commission on I-25, and I really do appreciate that. But then now we're sort of going down that list, and so now what's the advocacy that we're talking about? What is the corridor? And even at that 2020 workshop that we had, council at that point said, we want you to focus on I-25 and see that you figure out what those projects are. So I think that's one way to look at it. I mean, we're saying, yeah, we think those are the candidate projects, some of the things that we think are important to get done, but they may not necessarily be the only ones. And as Becky said, 2031 maybe the next time we see any money coming onto this list.
Can I ask then, so on the other list that you had up there of the Highway 392 was on there, but none of these are in that. So that's where you're saying that those are the corridors we're going to focus on, but then these are some of the projects that could come out of those corridors? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So for example, like on I-25, the last one on I-25 is this Highway 14 interchange. So that is, I think, I can't see the list very well, it's very small.
That's right there. Yeah, come on up.
Yeah, so that would be one of the candidate projects. Now, if something happened and CDOT said, we're having issues, we don't think we got the timing, we don't think we got the money to do that, it might move to something else.
Okay.
But council has said in the past, we're leaving that up to you, CDOT, to tell us what projects make sense on these corridors. But the council as a whole has said, we want to focus on this corridor, and that's where we want to advocate for funding.
Great. So thank you for answering my question, and this is why I'm asking the question, because I was at the meeting in 2020, and I've used this list for several years to be advocating for these projects, to get them on the 10-year list, and then advocate for them to get funding once they're on the list. So I have a lot of questions, more so than just the ones on their slide, so yes, but I'll take turns.
Yeah, and CDOT used to take our list, right? They have priorities. I mean, what we have on our list is their priorities, I know that, but they also have priorities that they got money funded towards. I mean, there's money going towards interchange at 14 and 25. We just approved at our last council meeting, the STIP amendment to give money, their design money. So we know that's getting worked on. That allows them, even though it might not be US 34, but we know they're working on it and it's on our list. So they look at this list, and I'm not going to speak for Heather, but in the past, that's how we defined what we were going to start to work on. Because a lot of these projects, if you got money tomorrow, you're not building them tomorrow. These are 5, 10-year projects. So you might get design money and say, hey, we're going to put it into 34 and 2017. But that doesn't mean it's going to get constructed, but it's getting it ready for the future.
So, to my understanding, TAC has certainly seen and vetted the corridor list. As far as tier 1, tier 2, I would imagine that the interstates and US highways are tier 1s, state highways, regional corridors, tier 2 then.
It's a mix. There are some I-25 projects on tier 2, but that's because they are further down the line to the ultimate configuration. So longer than the 10-year list that this 10-year life of the list originally. So
I'm completely fine with the priorities and the way this is laid out. I'm curious as to the MPO's interaction with CDOT as far as the formatting. My guess is we were calling it a 10-year plan. They've got their plan. So is it just a suggestion that we call it something different then, or?
that was my idea to call it something different first, because there was so much confusion, and then we sort of finessed the name to come up with, to come up with this name. But it's to be distinct from the CDOT list and to show that these are our projects and our priorities as the NFRMPO, but that it does feed into CDOT.
Okay. Please.
Okay, so along these lines, earlier in your presentation, you showed the Transportation Commission guiding principles, and if you could go back to the slide, I'm very familiar with all of these. I'll write some of them. I'm curious why safety is not circled.
That I do not know. I will tell you, this is the list that I got from headquarters staff, and the red around it was to show what TC had changed or added in 2021. And I was told this was the most current list, and this was the list I was given.
Okay, so I just want to clarify how this comes across perhaps to the audiences that aren't as familiar. So you're right, those are new additional content to the Transportation Commission principles, but they're by no means meant to be priorities relative to the other. So while they're circled in red to show, yes, we added social equity, we added reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, that is not over and above safety or over and above leverage or asset management or any of those things. So I just want to clarify how this could come across to others, is that you're prioritizing, or the TC is prioritizing some of these more than others. I would say everything comes back to, for us, to safety. And so when I looked at the list and read the packet and read through the project, it wasn't clear to me which of these projects were going to substantially move the needle on safety and reduce severe and fatal crashes. So that, to me, would be one of the, I look at this list and I've done for the last several years, how do I take this and advocate for this at a statewide scale? Because every region, every group, every planning region, every district is going to have their list. And so how do we convey which of these high priority tier 1 projects are going to move the needle on safety, on emission reduction, on affordable mobility and choice, on social equity? So I didn't see that in the information that I saw on the list. I saw descriptors that talked about widening from 2 lanes to 4, 4 lanes to 6. And so I think as this work continues to evolve, it would be really helpful to see how do these projects tie back to the breadth of those goals and principles and lead with safety, if you can. And so again, I'm not here to look at one project versus the other, that's not my role, but I'm trying to look at how does this list come forward in a way that's going to well position Northern Colorado to be successful on the next 10-year plan for CDOT. And so that these high priority projects can get a foothold, not just a toehold, but a foothold, just like we did with North I-25 to move it forward. So that's the piece behind my question and why I'm trying to help.
So prior to 2019, we had this list called the 10-year development list, and it was exactly what Kathleen's talking about. There was about $4.8 billion worth of work on Region 4's projects, if you remember. Now it's all the TPRs and all the areas and all the different modes, and bike and ped and transit and all the things we're talking about. If you remember, in that document, it put in each one of the priorities for the council, or the Transportation Commission at the time, and how they fit. So when money came forward in certain areas, could be a safety project, where feds put out a project of safety, they don't really look at the TC's priorities, they look at what comes out of that kind of money, like protect money. It's not gonna look at economic, well, it will look at economic vitality or mobility. But yeah, but it will look at that because of environmental, social, and economic impacts. But it might not look at some of those things. And we had a list that, Suzette, do you remember the list I'm talking about? And it broke it into those categories for every single project. So when some money came out, we know what projects we were going to put forward that met the best on that list. We dropped that somewhere down the path about January 16th, 2019.
The exact date.
Always got the text.
At 4:30 in the afternoon. But I think what that might, with these, you don't want to put it in the RTP, but if that's something that's needed in these projects, when we start to apply for money, that we can break those projects out, because all these projects probably meet 90 to 100% of what we're talking about.
Please.
So what I'm hearing you say, and I think, and Heather's online, she's been chatting a little bit too, but I think what we need to do is maybe take the list that has been developed and say, and then sort of make a matrix of how does those projects on that list meet these various criteria by the Transportation Commission. So I think that's what I'm hearing as sort of the next step that we need to do. So that helps position us for the money falling from the sky, and we have our hand out, and we're ready for it.
Please.
I think we have a really good case to make. I mean, 34 is a great, I mean, we're already investing our own dollars in it. We're creating a TMO, or, I mean, it's about, building transit on a corridor that doesn't have any, I mean, everything about that, it's a transit that connects communities that, have disproportionately affected people. So I don't think it's, we may not have made the case in the slide, but I think that there's a real strong case to make for, I mean, I drove on 34 today.
How'd you feel?
Let's say.
How'd you feel?
I feel great. You're telling me it did not feel great. So,
I know, every day,
I would
every
have
day.
loved to take a bus.
Please.
Yep, and I really appreciate that, and that's really what I'm trying to do, is say, how do you convey the information that's here? These are good projects, I'm sure they tie back to all of these goals, but how do you articulate that in a way that's going to tell that story, not only around this table, but around all of the other tables that will be having similar conversations, and how to position the projects going forward. The other suggestion that I have is, the way the material comes across is, here's our road projects, and they're, at least according to my math, and I didn't get all the way down the list, I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Billions.
Yes, so, yeah, and I was just on the first page, I got to 233 billion, and so, yes, I'm sure it's in the billions. You get to the transit list, and it's tiny, and you get to the bike ped list, and it's even tinier. So, again, it's conveying that the roadway projects are what I think they are, and that's what but I don't want to presume, I think they need to be articulated, that they are multimodal corridor projects, and I think you get to that in one of the columns that was there. But I would ask you, was the work that was done in a way that would pair your tier 1 highway category with your tier 1 transit? To the point about 34. 34 is a straight corridor, but if you compare the roadway as the tier 1 top one, and the transit on 34 is also the tier 1 top one, that starts to even build a stronger case. So it's 34, not only from a roadway standpoint, but also a transit and also bike ped. So it's amplifying the why behind that corridor, and that's probably a similar case you could make for the other corridors, but I didn't see that the way it came across in a more linear way.
Just put US 34, just like US 36 between Denver and Boulder.
But I
That's
think
the
there's
corridor.
more opportunity there on 34.
But that's everything you're talking about, bike ped, transit, BRT,
Right.
safety, everything that was put in, additional lanes.
Right, and managed
So,
lanes.
yeah.
That's all. So I'm just trying to help you tell the story behind these projects so that they can stand alone. And you think about the current 10-year plan, there's a lot of people don't see these, but there's a link on the far right side, and if you click on that link, you go to a page that describes the project. Think about how you're going to be selling that project on that link to others in the future.
I think the reason why they got split originally was because that was how the funding was sort of divvied up at that point. I think that's why they got split. But I'm just use IS-25 as an example.
Right. Yep.
It's obviously a multimodal project. There's transit and there's bike and pedestrian.
10-year plans.
components. So so
then they put it all back together.
having to
But it's
figure
still
out.
split, they're not in one project. All the projects are
Right,
separate.
exactly. And I think we'll have to talk about how we can make that look a little more comprehensive on the corridors.
I do want to add, the reason that the transit and the bike and the non-motorized look so small is because the projects that were originally put on there in 2019, 2020, we don't have a tier 3 for non-motorized because all of those projects got funded. Locals funded them through other calls for projects. The projects that are left on the list are the ones that were not funded. Everything else that was originally on the list has been funded and it's moved off. Nothing has been added. Nobody's added anything, and there isn't anything on the priority corridors to add. And transit's the same way. So I don't want it to come across that there's only this many projects. I want people to know that there were a lot more projects, and we got those taken care of, and this is what's left on those. And those lists are much smaller than roadway, which has 3 tiers.
If I can ask a clarifying question around what you just said, what surprises me about what you just said is the Northport Range MPO has just developed a new regional transit plan that has come forward. And so I guess this is why it's helpful to have the conversation. My understanding is what came out of that regional transit plan would now fill that transit list with new things. And it's great, and it's a great story to tell, yes, you've been successful, and you've chipped away at the list over time. That is a really important component to tell. It's been done locally, and it's been done through partnerships. But does the new transit plan from the North Front Range, is it reflected on the transit list that's in this packet?
Those are corridors. I don't know that there's an actual,
So US
Project.
Transit.
It's on there.
yeah. That one is on there, but specific projects out of the premium transit analysis, there isn't anything on there because,
There's not
Yeah.
specific
Yeah.
projects, but I would also add that the other two corridors from the NOCO project don't line up with the regional corridor, the regionally significant corridors, which I think was one of the other considerations for not including them on the list.
Okay, I guess that would just be a request if you could consider how to integrate your recommendations that came out of the North Front Range Regional Transit Plan into the transit list, because even if it's connecting 392 to, whatever, just say that way, 14, it may not be just one corridor, but it's, anyway, I'm just trying to help you not lose an opportunity to link your plans with this potential candidate, particularly if this is the shot we all have through 2031. That feels like a long time.
After 2031 or later.
Right, so I just, I'm just trying to help you make sure you get as many things as you can in terms of spaghetti up on the wall. I won't use spaghetti, that's probably a bad analogy. But as many things as you can out on the list, because we all know lists get winnowed down. But if you start with a small list, you end up with less. But if you start with more, you could end up with at least a handful left at the end of the.
And
So that's my suggestion.
Yeah, and I would say the other thing is, this is really important. This is a list that we're coordinating with CDOT on, right? This is not to say, this is only that one list. There is still a call for projects, there are still grants, there are still a lot of other opportunities that are out there. This is just saying that if we want to coordinate with CDOT and the money falling from the sky analogy, this is what we would say is our priority. And I will say, the list of the non-motorized and transit is in the packet, it was in the handouts, and US 34 is on the number one on both of those lists. So I think what you're telling us is that be a little more comprehensive on the corridor, so that when we're advocating for US 34, we're advocating for all parts of that corridor.
Yes.
I think that's what I'm hearing the discussion about.
That is what I'm trying to help today. We have a good, we have a good track record on the current 10-year plan. Let's keep that track record going and get good projects on there again to be able to keep, for whatever money comes from wherever. Right. I'm just trying to figure out how to help be successful and have clarity on the advocating of that.
Additional comments for Becky, please, or questions?
Quick question, if we do the matrix, which I think is a great idea, are we gonna have time to take a look at it again before? Okay, good. I'd like to see how it all shakes out.
Becky, so this is discussion tonight.
Yes.
Will there be an approval in the next meeting, or do you need approval? Just a general head nod from us, please.
I can bring it back for discussion again next month with the matrix to make sure that it reflects what council wants.
That'd be great. Thank you. Okay. Number 16 is the 2023 congestion management process. Medora, please. Alex. Or,
So I get to talk to you guys about the fun stuff and then hand it over to Medora because she did a lot of the work, which just seems like a lot of the ways that I talk to you guys now. It's just, I get to take glory for work that Medora has done. So tonight here to talk about the congestion management process. Coincidentally, we do really appreciate that Evans has sent us a lot of photos of construction that they've done. So that worked out really well. Wanted to start off by explaining what exactly the congestion management process is that effectively it's asking what is congestion, where is congestion, and what do we do about congestion. And so it's a very bureaucratic document that supports a lot of other documents and initiatives and plans and programs that the NPO has, but it is required because we do have a transportation management area over 200,000. And so as part of this, we need to look at the transportation system performance, assess alternative strategies for congestion management that meet state and local needs. But effectively, rather than just defaulting to capacity, what are the other strategies that we can implement to address congestion? So the CMP is structured into these 5 sections. So the first is to establish goals and performance measures, define the system, measure congestion, evaluate the strategies, and then implementation and assessment. And so we started off by looking at the 2050 regional transportation plan goals that the Planning Council approved in the last few months. And these are our starting point for figuring out how does congestion figure into the RTP process. What are we looking at? How do we address congestion within these 4 goal areas? Digging deeper, we look at defining congestion. And so there are 2 major types of congestion. One is recurring congestion, and that's just because the capacity of the road does not meet the amount of demand. And then there's things like non-recurring congestion, like a crash, construction, weather, a special event at a site. And so recurring congestion is exactly what it sounds like, that it happens pretty consistently, it's recurring. Non-recurring congestion is an incident that causes congestion that time. And so congestion is measured specifically in a few ways. And this is where I can hand it off to Medora, where she'll talk about the analysis that she did. Sorry, Ashley's watching now. So I mentioned that part of the CMP is defining the corridors. And so we start off by looking at congestion on the regionally significant corridors specifically. Again, this is what was approved by council in July of last year. And so this is the network that we start with. And then through the analysis that Medora did, we're able to see where the actual congestion network is. And with that, I will pass it off to you.
Thank you, Alex. So we have a set of performance measures, and many of these overlap with performance measures for the 2050 RTP that you've approved. But there are some tweaks here and there. The first measure that I want to talk about is the travel time index. This is a measure of recurring congestion, and it looks at travel time during your typical peak period, which is 4 to 7 p.m. or 7 to 9 in the morning, and compares that to free flow travel conditions. It's generally looking at pretty small segments. So if you think about a segment that takes 2 minutes during free flow, but it takes 3 minutes consistently during the peak period, that would put it above the 1.5 threshold. It's 50% longer. So that's what you see on this map. For calendar year 2022, in red are the segments that are at least 50% longer during your typical peak period. We pull from a bunch of different data sources, mostly from INRIX, which is pulling from phones and navigation systems, but we also supplement for some of our RSCs, those aren't in the INRIX system, and so we look at our travel model for some roads, and also from the local travel time data sets from our cities of Fort Collins, Loveland, and Greeley. Next measure we look at is travel time reliability, and this is a federally required measure, so it's very specifically defined. It's only available on our National Highway System network, which is I-25 and a few of our state highways and US highways. So this measure is looking at the 80th percentile travel time compared to the 50th or median travel time. So it is a bit different from the previous measure because it's looking at how variable that time is. And another way to think about it, if you look at 100 days, how bad is it on the 21st days compared to the 50th, the median? So we're again using the 1.5 threshold. So on this map, if it's segment in red, it means that at the 80th percentile travel time, it's at least 50% longer than typical. So you can have a corridor that is congested, but reliably congested. You can have a corridor that is not congested, but it's really variable, so it's unreliable. Or you can have both on a corridor. So you'll notice that there aren't that many segments that show up as red. They're generally fairly isolated near intersections, although we do have a few longer segments that show up. The last measure is truck travel time reliability. This one is fairly similar to the last measure in terms of what it's looking at. There are a few differences. One is it's only available on the interstate through this federal required system and data availability. It is looking at the 95th percentile travel time, so it's a more stringent standard, and it's just looking at trucks. So we have noticed that I-25 is all green on this previous map, it's reliable. But when you look at the truck travel time and you're looking at the 95th percentile, a lot of it shows up as unreliable for this analysis. Again, this is for 2022, so this is likely strongly impacted by construction, and we will be interested to see how this looks once the construction happens. So from those three measures, we take a look at where the congestion is based on those thresholds, and come up with a list of the congested regionally significant corridors. It's a long list, a lot of our corridors have congestion on them. There are several corridors that do not, shown on the right. And later you'll hear from Alex what we're doing with this information, what it means to be a congested RC. So hold on while I talk about a few more performance measures. We do a few other ones just to give more context to this CMP, to look at travel behaviors and patterns. So vehicle miles traveled per capita, looking at that trend, obviously big dip in 2020, slight increase in 2021, but still well below where we were before. Number of crashes, our 2020 crashes went down. What you see in this chart in orange is the number of crashes, and then in blue we look at the number of crashes on the regionally significant corridor network. And interestingly, that went down even more so than the number of crashes overall in the region. So you see in that gray line, that's the percentage of crashes on the RCs. So that was interesting to find that there are fewer crashes on our RCs, more on the non-RC network. Transit ridership per capita, big dip, obviously. Percent of non-single occupant vehicle commute trips. The latest data we have still has several years of pre-pandemic data in there, but looking at some more recent data that isn't as specific to our region, but we are seeing the telework rates are continuing to stay high. So you may notice in this bar chart, the telework rate did increase a bit from the first time period to the second, and we know that's going to increase even more once newer data becomes available. Percent of devices connected by fiber on RSCs, this is one of our newer measures, and the current status is that 87% of those devices are connected by fiber, which will help with our operations improvements. And the last measure, peak hour excessive delay on the national highway system in the Fort Collins urban area. This is another one of those federally required measures with a very specific formula for how it's calculated. What it's looking at is how much really bad congestion is happening on a per capita basis over a calendar year. So it's just looking at the national highway system in Fort Collins area. It's averaging out to somewhere between 2.3 to 4 hours per person of this really bad congestion over a year. Again, that dipped a lot in 2020, it increased slightly in 2021. So we analyze those measures to get a good picture of where we are. We see a lot has changed with the pandemic, but we still have these locations of congestion throughout our region. So the next major section of the CMP looks at sort of a toolbox of strategies of what we can do to address the congestion. And we've grouped them into three categories: strategies that help manage demand, strategies that help manage the existing supply, and last, strategies to expand our capacity. So within those categories, we've identified tiers for the strategies, sort of explaining how the strategies work. So the top tier, these strategies shorten the trip, or they reduce the need for trips entirely. So that really helps clear out and provide a more long-lasting solution to the congestion issue. Next tier is encouraging a shift to transit and active modes. Tier 3 increases vehicle occupancy and shifts travel to non-peak periods. Then under supply, we have improving roadway operations through ITS and traffic incident management. So with that, I will turn it back to Alex, who will give you a little bit better idea of what is included in the strategies in the CMP.
Great. So I think the best way to do this is to bring up the actual draft CMP that we have out, or it's still up. It's out for public comment right now. That's posted on our website. And so the first few sections are what Medora and I have talked about throughout. The same charts, the analysis that Medora just went through. But the big piece in this is looking at those strategies. So you'll see that there's red text, and what Medora just went over with these CMP strategy categories is based on the feedback that we got from TAC when we took it last month. There was some discussion about prioritization and how do these fit together, and a little bit more of that storytelling aspect. So this is what we are proposing, is what Medora just went over, is the demand management, supply management, and capacity, which is how I think TAC understood those categorizations as well. We've also, with all of the strategies specifically, identified if they are a proven safety countermeasure to tie in that safety aspect. Obviously, the congestion management process is very focused on congestion, as in the name, but we do care about safety, and we want to make sure that the projects that we're looking at do have the safety aspect as well. And then also air quality projects, so looking at the most cost-effective air quality projects based on CMAQ emissions reductions. And so what we've done is, in the tiers that Medora just went over, we've gone through with these specific strategies. So for example, under tier 1, shortening the trip or reducing the need for trips in the first place, is looking at land use and development practices. If you don't need to take a trip, that saves a car trip. There's also telecommuting. Obviously, again, if you can work from your bedroom and your commute is walking from your bed to the desk, I think that's a pretty sustainable way to go. Encouraging the shift to transit in active modes. We have things like bicycle infrastructure. The other thing that we have done is that we have gone and looked at our local communities, because we do want to celebrate that a lot of our local communities are already implementing a lot of these strategies. And so for the bicycle infrastructure, the Loveland Recreational Trail, which is a circle trail around the city, was just completed within the last few years. And so that has a lot of great bicycle infrastructure as an example. We have the bicycle and scooter share service, BRT, as was mentioned before, that Fort Collins has under study and is under construction. I won't go through every single one of these. I know I'm super excited, but I don't think that's the best way to handle a council meeting. But just jumping around to some of these other ones, under tier 3, which is increasing vehicle occupancy, alternative work schedules, congestion pricing, we have ride sharing, such as Bango. Tier 4, there's somewhere in here. As you can tell, we have quite a few strategies that you can look at. In terms of operations, there are things like transit signal priority that keeps buses moving, traffic signal timing. Tier 5 is specifically around traffic incident management. And that was a big topic, is that on I-25 and US 85, there's already the traffic incident management groups that meet pretty consistently. So making sure that that is prioritized and invested in. And then tier 6 is just capacity overall. One of the caveats to the CMP is that if there is a bottleneck or a safety concern, then capacity is justified. And so we do include capacity as strategies to address that. So with that implementation, talking about the call for projects, and then a big thing that we have also added for this go around is this flow chart, where we are asking local communities to fill out a single occupancy vehicle analysis. And so this flow chart is effectively the logic that you should use based on the CMP guidance that we have. So first, is the project on a congested RSC? If not, you don't need to worry about the SOB analysis, but also it is not an RSC, you're not applying for NPO funding. Will the project increase SOB capacity? If so, does it address a bottleneck or safety concern? And if it does, then looking at the SOB analysis, and effectively the SOB analysis worksheet is describing the project, what of the CMP strategies are already in place, and which ones do you plan on implementing as well? And so it's looking at that holistic corridor, that are you, if you're adding capacity, are you also looking at transit stops? Are you looking at bike lanes? Are you looking at sidewalks? The things that a lot of our communities are already doing. This is just justifying it. We are required to do a periodic report as well. So getting this information through the culvert projects will help us do that intermittent periodic report. And I think those are the big things. Obviously, one of the goals that the Planning Council gave Suzette last year was looking at more transportation demand management. Laura pointed out the demand management strategies. A lot of those overlap with what are in the TDM action plan. And then, as always, going back and looking at strategies, what has worked, what hasn't worked, what can we do better? And with that, how does the CMP draft in a nutshell?
Questions, comments for Alex, please?
You mentioned it's out for public comment. What type of comments are you receiving on the plan, or have you received?
I don't believe that we've received any public comment yet.
So most of the public comments are coming more from stakeholders, like local agencies and.
Yeah, we had a really good conversation with TAC that gave us, so a lot, what's out for draft now has a lot of the changes we made after the TAC discussion in April.
John?
So, I'm not questioning where you pulled the data from, but you knew this was coming, didn't you? I can tell you, I lose more time on you between Boise and County Road 13 and 15. I lose more time than 3 to 5 minutes of my day on US 34 on a regular basis. So it just surprises me that it's not above 1.5. And
Not that he's questioning the data.
I'm questioning the data, not questioning her. Okay. She's only pulling the data from the data, right? She's pulling the data from the thing. I'm not questioning that she's doing it wrong. I'm questioning that, and I have a hard time believing that's criteria. And then I-25, especially during construction, I've seen I-25 where so many times businesses don't move there because it's congested too much at peak hour. And we're saying that it's green.
You know, I do wonder if.
So do we need transit? Do we need expansion? Do we need anything? Just leave it alone. All of it, just don't do anything.
Yeah.
Good, check, moving on.
One thing that I think might be impacting this, that I haven't done the additional analysis, is that we're averaging over longer time periods. So it's looking at 4 to 7 p.m. So is it congested for 3 hours? I'm not.
Yeah.
But then but it goes back to the reliability though, because the reliability is, are you losing time over a period of time? It's not so much a travel time index. And there's still, you go to the reliability chart and it's still all,
yeah,
except for 85. Right. It's true.
Yeah, but remember, reliability is that weird measure that
Oh, I
just
know.
says it can be awful, but as long as it's consistently awful.
You'll get there, it may take 4 hours, but you'll get there.
So I guess I have similar questions on that because, and I know your data is always lags, so we're in this time period that we're in. I mean, and again, this is just anecdotal, but I spend a lot of time on I-25 and now that I work from home several days a week and then I commute in, I choose to, I'm able to not always commute during peak periods. I am finding more congestion on I-25 and other regional corridors all day long.
Yeah.
Especially on weekends.
Right, and on weekends, so I'm wondering, because more people are shifting how we work, instead of the traditional peak of AM and PM peak, we have like an all-day peak is what it feels like as a, I would say it's good to be our own customers, right? When you're stuck out there.
And this is a huge win, because we don't always agree, and I 100%.
Right. We need this in the meeting, so.
You gotta check it off, we gotta grab a treat now.
Get a lottery ticket or something. So I think that's, but it goes to the credibility of the data, because if other people are seeing this, and that's why I asked about public comment, they're saying this doesn't, it's not congruent with their daily experience. And so how is that,
Overcome that.
being useful for the public? I understand you have to use these tools and these sources.
We're not questioning you.
Right.
Please understand.
So I'm just trying to understand, we create a lot of great reports, but then how do they get used and how do they reinforce the credibility of what we're trying to do versus how do
If she
they?
went to a public meeting today and said I-21 is good and US 34 is good, they would never let her out of it.
Go with the
Chair, can
budget.
I sort of chase a rabbit, just a small one? So I'm lucky to be on the Rotary Young Ryla and Ryla, where they go to leadership camp and they come in and interview. And one of the questions we asked them today, and it made sense to me, and I get it, but it just sort of really floored me a little bit, is the question was, what is the most challenging thing youth and our society's having today, and how would you fix it? Out of 8 of the interviews, 7 of the interviews, 5 said isolation. And isolation turns into mental health. And we asked them, explain. I know my parents aren't as happy today as they were when they were working every day. They're home more, working from home. Kids during COVID, or kids being at home too much and not being around people and not being engaged, because it was so funny, they all use the same word. We want to be around people. We are people. We have to be around people. And every single one of those kids identified that today. And we're trying to encourage more working from home. And our youth is saying it's not working. Behavioral health issues are coming out of it. I was floored. I thought it would be social media or bullying. We didn't get that.
Well,
Do they need access?
Yeah.
to speculate, in transportation planning plan, where we have tried to decrease VMTs, decrease congestion, see all the downward, we had COVID, man, all of a sudden we had a work from home situation, and that was an easy fix for a lot of things to do. And we don't stop to take a societal measure on that, but that's something that Medora can't put in.
I was just amazing that story, that these kids were saying.
Please.
I would say just one thing on that is that for a lot of people that have young children though, it's really nice to have the flexibility to sometimes work from home. So I think that there's other situations, or if anybody's had to try to find daycare in the past.
I'm not saying it's a good thing.
Right.
I'm just saying what the kids said.
No, right, and so, even some of these plans that encourage people to work from home 2 or 3 days a week, when we gave all of our child protection workers work from home now. They have a space they can come into and work if they want to, or things off or whatever, but they largely work from home and they really love it. A lot of them have young kids at home, and so that flexibility is really important. So, I think that providing people, the options are good. And we created a very robust work from home program that I'm happy to share with anybody, but, we have, the guidelines around it, we have where you can work from. Some people even work from out of the state, as long as they don't work in the state that we have tax issues with, but, like California, or, I don't know, New Jersey or something. But we have a stipend for the people who work at home. They have a place that they can come and log in and be in a workspace if they want to, but it does, for a lot of people's schedules, it's really nice to have that flexibility. And so I don't think it's an all or nothing kind of thing.
I'm not saying that.
I do think that I wish I would have had that much flexibility when I was young. That would have been really helpful to my family.
Please say that.
So getting back to the data issue for Medora, Are you required to use this data set and show it like this, or can you look at a different data set? I know that some of this is very structured and we have to do X, Y, Z.
Yes, the reliability measures are very structured. Those are the federal measures and they define the periods, the time periods. For the travel time index, that is our own regional measure. So when, you're absolutely right, there's a lot more travel happening midday. The peak spreading, there's just a lot more traffic. I did look at each of the 24 hours and picked the 3 highest. So it's still the 4 to 7 is the highest, but there's a lot additional compared to 4 in the afternoon. So I think there are options if we want to look, slice and dice the data differently for travel time index. On the reliability one, it's pretty set already. Not that there aren't underlying issues in the data. That's totally possible as well. When they're pulling the data from phones and navigation systems, it's, they have to make assumptions too when they're pulling that together.
Please.
I just think it may go more, if we can't necessarily, the data is the data and the different sources, but perhaps these considerations could come into play in designing those countermeasures and the TDM. And so it could be, there's TDM strategies that move beyond just the traditional peak type trips. And then the point about isolation, I mean, that to me, there's an opportunity for access for young people to be able to take transit, to ride their bikes, to get out and be able to access their friends and opportunities and, you know, whatever it may be. I think that's part of the challenge we have as a transportation system when it's so auto-dependent. Young people have fewer choices, and so then they're only able to travel if their parents can take them or something like that. So I think the more in those TDM strategies, if we could look at a wider set of not just mitigation measures, but opportunities that help address that and go beyond just what the data is. Thank you.
So maybe one of the things we could do in the report is to make sure on these travel time index that we footnote this very carefully about what this is and why it's showing what it's showing, because we're very constrained by the data and information and how we have to show the map. But I think if you're going back to your travel time reliability, maybe that's something that we could, travel time index, the one that we have some control over, that maybe we could look at some data in that one and just see if that makes sense to do more peak, get it out of the peaks and do more spread across the day. I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. I know we need to get this ready for the RTP. So I don't know what the council's thought is on that. Just maybe writing us like a little note under each one of the ones that we're sort of constrained that we can't really do anything about because it's very structured.
And next steps, Alex and Medora, are to finalize and bring back, and then if this is added, it's part of the next plan, what the RTP then, okay.
Yes, so this will be a constituent plan of the RTP. So assuming there aren't, like, we'll go back and take the comments that we've heard tonight, take it back to TAC next month, and back here this month.
Yeah, this month, then bring it back.
And then bring it back to council in June.
Very good. Please.
Sorry, I just thought of one more thing, just in that timeline, help me. So I do have questions around the capacity piece, but what I heard you say in the presentation and the document, the capacity strategies are very focused around like a pinch point, like an intersection or something like that. It's not just the old thing where it's like, I try to lose weight by buying bigger pants. It doesn't work. I tried it. I tried a lot of strategies around that. So I just want to make sure I heard that correctly around the capacity, that it is more focused.
Yeah, so I would say that the idea of capacity is that you have tried demand management strategies to address congestion. We've tried the supply management aspects. And then if those don't work, then you consider capacity. So we didn't want this to necessarily be a flow chart itself, but the idea is that start here, then go here. Then go here.
So it's an incremental
Right.
approach. So things like transit queue jumps and roundabouts would fall more on the supply management side. Is that?
I believe so.
I'm just trying to get an understanding of which example, but like the managed lanes on I-25, I think I saw the image as you were scrolling through the document would be in the supply management.
Yes.
I'm trying to understand which technique fits in which.
I didn't think roundabouts are in capacity. I think anything to do with increasing the flow of vehicles is in capacity. Another example, transit queue jumps.
I believe is in supply management, but we do have transit service trolleys, transit service,
Quantity and quality.
yes. So the idea of providing more and better is tier 2.
Thank you. I think those images you were showing as you went through the document are helpful for us and for the communities and for the public to see live examples of what you need. Thank you.
And I think tying this back to what you mentioned earlier and what Commissioner Stevens mentioned earlier is the idea that this is a toolbox. It's not one size fits all. On a project by project basis, the idea is that it might make sense to add bike lanes, but it might also make sense that there's some other intervention as well. So it's not just a one and done, but the idea is that here is a list of strategies that you can look at.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Okay, number 17. Oh, I was really proud of being on time. Good. Number 17 is a 2023 call for projects update and roads, please.
I also assumed that since we didn't have a Booter Trail coming, that I got that extra half an hour.
You know what they say about us.
All right, so we wanted to bring back the 2023 call for projects. You're going to see this a lot over the next few months. But wanted to go through some more specific details during this discussion to help guide the rest of the planning for this call. Just as a reminder, we are awarding our 4 federal funding programs to this call, and we have about $22.7 million that we're awarding for 2026 and 2027. One of the first things that I wanted to talk about is for funding set-asides. One thing I want to mention before going into that is that even though this call is primarily for 2026 and 2027, it will also roll in any additional funds we have that haven't been allocated from 2024 and 2025. So we do have about $600,000 of STBG and about $1 million of the carbon reduction program funds that will be pulled into this. Those are just estimates at this point. This call will be opening following the beginning of state fiscal year 2024. So at that point, we'll have a little better idea of exactly the amount of funds that we'll have to award once the call opens in August.
And Rose, that's $1 million and not 100,000 for my favorite new acronym program, CRP.
Right, so we have about $1 million in 24 and 25 available. So we do have 2 requests for off-the-top funding, and I wanted to mention the 24 and 25 funds that we'll have available because both of these requests would be potentially utilizing those additional funds from the earlier 2 years. So the first set aside that I wanted to talk about is for the Regional Air Quality Council ozone modeling. So in the 2021 call for projects, which was to award 24 and 25 funds, the Planning Council approved a $25,000 per year set aside to do this ozone modeling. RAC has identified that there is a need for more funding for these earlier years, 2024 and 2025, and so they are requesting an additional $25,000 for those first 2 years of funding. So for the 24 and 25 funds that we have available. These funds will be used for ozone modeling and analysis for the ozone mountain area, which includes all of the North Front Range. It also includes technical analysis and civic planning, which must be completed by mid-2025 to meet the Clean Air Act deadlines, which is why they were requesting the earlier funds as opposed to the later funds at this time. So the request is to increase the 25,000 to 50,000. So that would be an additional $25,000 a year in 24 and 25, so $50,000. from those earlier year funds. And this would be used to complete the modeling for the serious SIP, which includes additional modeling and analysis requirements for the North Front Range monitoring sites. And one of the things that, one of the reasons why they are requesting more funds than they had originally requested is that the costs that were originally used to determine how much funding we would put towards this increased since the 2016 base modeling platform that the request was based on. And so the RAC will use these additional funds to build and use the new modeling platform and data. So wanted to.
Are we, Johnny, we'll go ahead first. You want to go first on this one?
Go ahead.
RAC has other sources of revenue, I'm assuming. Perhaps we're the easy well to fish from on that one. But Johnny, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on.
I wasn't going there, but I got a different one.
All right.
So if you go back to what it's coming, you're taking it out of STPG.
Yes.
And STPG is more flexible. This is an air quality, ozone monitoring. Why were we taking this out of CMAQ?
Modeling is not something that you can demonstrate an emissions reduction from, and so that's not able to be used. Modeling is not an eligible activity under the CMAQ program.
But it would follow still under our other, the CPG.
CRP?
Yeah, that one. I should remember that.
I would.
Property recovery program.
I do.
I would
Property
also
recovery program.
say no on that because carbon reduction program must show a calculated greenhouse gas emissions reduction benefit. And modeling doesn't show, you can't calculate an emissions benefit reduction from modeling. So that's why STPG is the program that we requested taking these funds out, and that's what was decided, in 2018 as well. And then, so for the modeling, the funds, they will be done for modeling within our region that is required under the Clean Air Act, and also we have had conversations with RAC about the proportionality of the funds being requested from us based on the population the North Front Range has in the ozone non-attainment area versus the Dr. Cog area.
And?
Yeah. And this is proportional.
Okay. I didn't get that. Yeah, that was a great way to the punchline.
Yes, but because of the serious SIP that is needing to be developed, there is that additional analysis that hadn't been anticipated when we first approved this first $25,000 a year. So there's additional funds that need to go into that.
You said it was just for 2 years?
Yes, so this request would be for 24 and 25.
Then it just goes back to the 25K?
That's not part of the request at this time.
It never goes back.
But I mean, we have to, as an ongoing requirement, we have to do this. So, I mean, and the RAC is tasked with doing this. And, I mean, I think we have to do this. We can't be like, and they do have other funding, but they use it for other programs that they have, so. I mean, I feel like as long as it's proportional to Dr. Cog, as long as we're not, but I mean, Dr. Cog actually gives quite a bit of money to the RAC. I mean, millions and millions of dollars. So.
How is this model different from what the NPO models for ozone?
I will hand that question over to the people who know that. And we also have Tom Moore from the RAC, who is online, who can also answer some of these questions, but Dora has someone else, so I can take a step, probably better Tom speaks to it. We provide our model, and that goes into part of it, but then they're looking at dispersion of the sources they pull in, the non-renewable data sources. I really shouldn't let Tom speak, I don't know what I'm doing.
You sounded good.
Tom, if you are on, you can go ahead and speak to that.
Sure. Thank you very much for the question. I'm assuming you guys can hear me all right.
Yes.
With the serious SIP that's required and this tighter ozone standard of 70 parts per billion, we've realized that we need to use a more current year to base things on. So that's likely to be 2022. So we will build a platform that you would proportionally contribute resources to. And then we would use local data along with state data to project the future and model the non-attainment. So we're actually building a new modeling platform that's much newer and reflective of how things actually are working at this point in time.
I'm curious as to why you don't apply from the non-attainment enterprise. Why don't you go fishing there?
That enterprise is only for transportation, I mean, it's only specific to, I mean, it's very specific in state statute what that can fund, and I don't think that that's one of the things that can fund. But
We will be likely submitting a proposal, a competitive proposal to the air quality enterprise. That's focused on some of the research activities as opposed to these Clean Air Act required activities. So it has a little different focus, but we will be also making an application for partial funding from the air quality enterprise.
Hi, Tom, this is Johnny Olson from the City of Greeley. I was wondering, what is the total budget for this for the North Front Range?
For the North Front Range, we model, the entire non-attainment area, so it's the metro area and the North Front Range, as well as including the rest of the state for their contributions. It's on the order of $1 million at a minimum, and it depends on how much work that we have funded to do the source contribution and the evaluation of the control strategies with the model. So we're going to develop a modeling plan, and we're going to put it out for public comment this fall. And that'll be the basis that we scope out the work and award the available funds that we can assemble by early next year. So that's kind of our sequence that we're going to go through on that.
Thank you.
I'm still, and I'm simple, but I'm hung up on the fact that we are in a non-attainment area and we can't use non-attainment monies to model the reduction. That's CRP. Just saying. Okay.
I think the money is more for implementing plans that would address it, not for the modeling of it.
Well,
So I think that's how the statute is written. It's written specifically for transportation, which we know not all ozone is transportation. And so, I mean, this gets at all the causes of the ozone issue, right? Not just transportation. And so, I mean, it seems like, if I'm remembering right, and I can pull up the statute and get you exact information, but it was more for implementation of plans that would deal with it, not, in fact, there was a plan that CDOT is going to withdraw from non-attainment that we're not going to fund because it's something similar. It's more like looking at gathering the data, and the way the statute reads is that it's more of an implementation piece. So, but I can pull up the exact data or the exact statute if that's, or email it later.
So I'm going to break it. I'm not going to speak for the commissioner, but I think I know where his brain is. So that's going to be, if I'm right, this is going to be scary. So we have limited funds in the North.
Yes.
Right? $50,000 I mean, and I'm just using an example, I'm not complaining, by the way, please don't take this as a complaint. $50,000 for 2 years, that's $100,000. That $100,000 would have went a long way for the Milliken bike path, right? So I think that's where some of our hang up is. It's not that we know we gotta do it, it's we gotta spend it, but trying to spend it wisely out of the right pots and how we gotta do it is different. And I guess I never, as an RTD, realized how little money the Norfolk Range actually has. I wish I'd have thought harder for that when I was a region director, but there's not a lot of money to really go around. And, when MMOF is going down, things are going down, they're not going up, right? And if you look back over years, it's probably about the same budget that we had when I was an RTD in 2010. So I think that's our concern. It's not that I don't think we need to, because I agree with Commissioner Stevens. We have to do this because we have to get the funding, but it's just hard when those $100,000 go a long way for some of our communities.
Well,
I think that's it.
maybe Suzette can speak to, is it the CPG money, the planning money, is that what the acronym is?
Yeah, we get what's called consolidated planning grant dollars. That is federal money that we get to do NPO work specifically. And we haven't really talked about putting any of that. I mean, it's always been like the program money. It's either SDBG or CMAC or CRP.
What's the funding that we don't really get as much from the state, and the one that
Dr.
Cog gets a lot?
That's the consolidated planning grant.
I mean, that's a pot of money that we should go after. I mean, we should be talking to CDOT and talking to Kathleen about how we get more of those dollars so we don't have to go into some of these dollars for that, especially if Dr. Cog is sitting on $8 million and they're kind of in trouble for actually not spending down their dollars. And I mean, let's disperse that money more equitably. If we're not given enough, if we're required to do planning and we're not given enough money to do that, I mean, it seems like, and I think that Suzette and I have talked about one plan is to sort of take it off the top and not, but I mean, that would be a way to recoup some dollars, that we could use for, for other programming. I mean, this, I don't see the wiggle room here, but I think in that space, there is wiggle room to get back some of the dollars that we've been using STBG?
Yeah, we use about $250,000 a year just to do what we need to do.
What's required to do when we should, and there again, Dr. Cog is sitting on a pot of money that they can't even spend. So there's some inequities around how that's distributed throughout the state. And we have to dip into money that could go out into communities to do our planning. So let's fix that. And then, but I still think we should pay this.
So go ask Dr. Cog, is the bottom line. Commissioner.
Yes, and I really appreciate you explaining that, because I had no idea there was that disparity between what you're saying, the consolidated planning grant funds that come here relative to Dr. Cog. And so, again, I look at this and I think this is something that has to get done as an input into the larger process. We need to figure out a way to do it. But I'm all for what Commissioner Stevens said. If we need to sit down and have a conversation about, as I talk about this a lot, Northern Colorado has grown so much over the last 20 years, but a lot of the apportionment or formulas that have been used for the last 30 years, I think are out of date. And there isn't a recognition that Northern Colorado has grown up. I mean, I hear all kinds of things, the metro area, I'm like, whoa, have you been to Northern Colorado lately? Because it is very different. And so I would be glad to have that conversation here. I don't know what
my understanding
behind that are,
is that we have to do the same planning as they do, but we have to do it from a much smaller pot of money. So we have to do all the same stuff, right?
Please.
Yeah, sorry. So when we were looking at this, and I have to say, CDOT staff sort of tipped me off to some of this money, because I was looking at, how much money we have, and they said, look at this memo that is out there, and it's like, at that point, the memo was saying there's about $6 million in unobligated CPG funds. Yeah, and this is back in 22. That's the market. CPG funds, yeah.
Now, stop, that's some CRP.
She's a kid.
That's difference of money.
I am not teasing when I say ask Dr. Cog for the additional money.
So, yeah, so
Out of the CPG.
what's going on is that we're getting ready to do the program distribution. So this is the prime time to talk about the distribution of CPG funds along with everything else. And to get that formula hopefully changed. Right now, the way that it's distributed in Colorado, all that CPG money comes in, and it's the Pueblo and Grand Valley get a floor because they need at least a minimum to be able to do their plans. And then the rest was distributed by population. The problem with that is proportionally for us, we're a pretty small population. So we never get enough money to do everything we need to do with just CPG funds. Where it's pretty obvious when you see the carryover that Dr. Cog gets more of the money than they can use to do what they need to do. I don't know how they do that, but that's the way it's working out when you see all that carryover.
Well, that would be great to sit down and talk more about this and see, because I mean, again, I look at it as what's the travel shed? We're trying to do transportation planning and regional planning for trips that are coming interregionally between the North Front Range and Dr. Cog, and we need to be looking at what are the resources to do that and do it effectively, and maybe some of these, like I said, formulas are out of date because it's not just population, it's population and jobs and.
Well, and it's also
travel
requirements, I think. What we're required to do.
Yeah.
And
So-
this is just page one of your presentation.
So
Eric.
I
This
think,
might be a small thing compared to the bigger thing we need to work on.
yeah, so I think what the Commissioner Stevens is saying is that perhaps if we could recoup our $250,000 in STBG, the pain of another $50,000 isn't gonna be as great.
Right.
Yeah.
And just a gentle reminder, because it's a thorn in my side, Weld County has an active court case with the EPA. I'm saying there's a chance that we might win this and get the non-attainment area pushed back, which would change the modeling parameters. Just a thought there.
All right, so what I'm hearing from this discussion is not approving this at this point. So to explore other
Let's
options.
explore other options
Before the council.
before giving our good spendable money to STBG.
Well, so that's a good question. The question was when do they need the money? And they need it pretty quickly, I think, is the answer, because they're getting ready to do modeling work. And yes, they are doing this modeling work, as Commissioner Stevens said, for us, because if it wasn't for them, we would be our only planning agency and we would be on the hook for doing
So I'll
this.
ask you a question then. If CPG money, if we use our existing CPG money today, knowing that you need it, and you needed it for your planning purpose, we can move STPG into your budget until we get the SPG money out of.
Right now, in the 2024 budget that you all just approved, it's got $250,000 of STBG in there to cover what we need to do.
For this
We
year.
can't even cover our planning, and Dr. Cog covers our planning plus $6 million. So I'm just saying that's, I mean.
Well, but
that's
what
the
I'm trying to
money
say,
go
instead of
after.
stripping it out of rack, if we have,
Oh,
we can give,
correct.
we get 250 a year.
We take $250,000 off the top of our STBG funds and put that towards internal planning.
Right.
So the number that I presented for 26 and 27, that already took into account taking $250,000 off the top of that
For this.
for our NPO
Just for
planning.
your-
Just for the UPWP, that's our work program. That's just to cover our work.
So we're not even covering our own assets.
Correct. Yes.
I doubt that's what she said.
It is, a lot of. Yeah, I get that they need it. I think the general consensus is let's try to maybe play a shell game with our money. And we have, this horse is dead now, and I know you have more slides.
Those next ones will be easy.
Yeah.
So I would say that likely this is not the last time we will talk about this.
Likely not the last time.
So
Hey, here's what I can say, and let me try to get a general head nod from the council. We're good for the money, but we'd like to find it from another pot. Okay,
Well, I mean, I think that this money we should pull out of the pot. I think we should go after the CPG money, so I guess.
But we
No,
can't take the
that's what I
CPG
heard.
money and put it, CPG money and put it back in. We can't pay ourselves back because the money won't allow us.
No, I'm just
So we'd lose the money for these next 2 years.
I'm just saying, we gotta pay the rec.
Yeah.
Right, I guess that's what I thought I heard was, let's figure out how to pay the rec, and then let's figure out how to get a bigger share out of the apportionment of the CPCP.
Well, we'll get that opportunity this summer.
So that, in a sense, we could end up getting more offset than what has to be paid for this.
Okay.
I agree.
I use this as an
We
example.
need to get enough to cover our CRP.
That's a good one.
And our ASS. All right, thank you. So yes. Yes.
Yes.
Wait, let me ask you a question. Do we have a choice? No, so yes.
So if the general consensus is saying yes to this $25,000 for 24 and 20, the additional $25,000 for 24 and 25, if that's the consensus tonight, then this will go into the next TIP amendment, which you would officially approve at our next meeting. So if the answer is yes, then I will plan on doing that. That will go up for public comment next week.
And we'll argue about it in an hour then.
All right.
Okay.
And so for the next funding set aside, I'm going to hand it over to Alex to talk about this TMO incubation funds.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I guess,
Well, I don't think you need to explain it. I think we know.
we talked about that.
We can save you 5 minutes of your time, Alex.
I was nervous coming up here.
Well, this is actually something we want to do.
Yes,
This
this
is-
is,
We all said we wanted to do it when we approved the TMO. Yeah.
So just one sentence, please.
Okay.
The idea for this is that we have provided the support to start up the US 34 TM. We don't know what the next few years will look like, but if we don't ask now, we lose our chance to possibly incubate, like if the US 85 coalition was interested, or the city of Fort Collins decided that they wanted to go. So the idea is how can we support ongoing US 34 coalition work around the TMO, and then if other TMOs are interested, are we giving them the same opportunity that the 34 coalition got? So
Great explanation.
cool.
yes.
Thank you. That was it. Thank you.
Is there any of those? Because I would have to ask you when we would adjust on the TMO.
Just as far as clarification on the amount of funds and the years, we were looking at carbon reduction program funds for these $100,000 per year starting in 2024.
So this money comes from Crown.
Yeah.
All right.
So the
They built more on crap. I can say.
next topic that I wanted to bring is that of eligible entities for applying for our funds in the competitive process. So in our previous calls, we've said that it's the NFRMPO member governments, or cities, towns, all of you all, and then our partner agencies, so CDOT and the RAC. And so this is saying who is eligible to compete in that competitive process. So I wanted to see if there was any questions or concerns about these eligible entities.
Makes sense.
All right,
Thumbs up.
if not, then we will move into.
Would a recreation district that covers trails be eligible entry?
That's a good
You
question.
would apply through the city or town. So, like what this says, the human service providers, school districts, things like that, would be through, Johnstown or whoever. And so then that would, count towards, the maximum award level for that agency. All right, so, the next piece of our discussion is the fun interactive piece. So.
Unlike the piece a couple of moments ago.
So what we wanted to do, going into this process, is to understand the planning council's goals and priorities, so that we can look at the programs that we have to award funding and how we will structure the scoring of those funding programs. So,
Before she gets started, can I ask a question? Because I don't know if I was understood last month at the Loveland office.
Okay.
I struggle, our commissioner just sat here and talked about safety being the number one priority of the department. And nowhere on our, if you take off all the black words and you just look at the nice pretty colors, safety is nowhere in our goals.
Now,
I struggle with
it's a subset of mobility, but I would like to be.
Lose people safely.
Actually, it's
Yeah.
really no, because if you're in an accident, you're probably not healthy.
That is correct. So we did adopt these goals, the 2050 RTP goals. And so that's how we've structured this. And safety is one of the pieces within mobility. And so the way that we envision this working is safety is the priority that I've heard in a lot of discussions. You are correct that it's not one of those 4 like buzzword type goals that we have there.
That's not buzzword,
But-
that's reality. That's real.
But, right, and so the way that this can play out so that safety does rise to the top is we're gonna go through and prioritize these goals.
So mobility should.
So mobility it sounds like mobility is going to naturally rise to the top. And then within each of these areas, we have different kind of sub-criteria, safety being the one within mobility. So then safety is also going to rise to the top. By going through this exercise, we're wanting to be able to understand the priorities from the planning council, which I definitely know is safety. So when we look at the scoring criteria for our projects, that's going to rise to the top in most of them. There are, the specific emissions reductions. So for CMAP and for carbon reduction, the air quality, that's going to rise to the top because it's a requirement. But I think for the rest of it, making sure that safety is a high priority and that we're looking at that and allocating points to that for our projects.
And I look forward to seeing the scoring system, and we'll make sure it receives the most points. Yes.
Is it too late to make it, this is be another surprise where we agree?
3 times in one night.
We have to end the meeting. But,
Done.
is it too late? I know we had this at our meeting last time, and I raised some questions, and it's really been sitting on my mind ever since. Not only, is it too late to say, could it be safe mobility? Or is there a way to get that word in the headline instead of as one of what could end up being a dozen criteria? Because we all know how the math works. Once you're one of 12, your weight, even if we try to emphasize it some way, is still one of 12 versus is there a way to say it out loud at the front end about it's safety and mobility or safe mobility or something that emphasizes it from the beginning. And I understand we voted on this before, so it may be a protocol type thing, but I do share that concern. I mean, every day we see the headline, and every day we not only see the headline that someone else has died in northern Colorado or has gone to the hospital, we see the data across the front range and across the country. And every agency, local, regional, state, federal, is saying, what do we do to save lives? We can't keep doing things the same way and expecting a different outcome. And so how do we task ourselves with starting with safety and, or at least putting it on an equal footing with operations and mobility or something? So I am struggling with it. I've been struggling with it since last month. 2 months back, when we had the federal safety criteria, I was told, don't worry, this is just the federal criteria. We can do more ourselves for the NPO. But when we saw this last month, I think it was last month, our safety just reflects back to the federal. So we're really not challenging ourselves to do more ambitiously to save people's lives.
So, Anna Rose, the council has adopted these goals and criteria, these goals, correct? So we would have to change that. We'd have to go back and propose and amend it and have the council re-adopt it. Assuming, I'm just going to throw this out here, assuming that we say safe mobility or something, we get a safety word in there, would it really change what the criteria is underneath that? And I guess I'm wondering, we can go back and do that, But would it really change what criteria we're trying to prioritize tonight if we go back and amend that document to put the word safety in there? And I'm just throwing that out there. I know this is sort of like a spur of the moment thing, but just wondering.
You know, if you just look at the word that says mobility and swap that out with safety, and then you read it moves people and goods safely, efficiently, and reliably on a continuous transportation system, it's interchangeable. It's all wordplay.
So we could pass this and then go back and amend just to change the word.
We've already passed it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, okay.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Exactly. That's exactly what I'm asking. Is could we go ahead and do the ranking of the criteria tonight and then come back and amend the goals to reflect the word safety?
Yeah, just the subject title of goals, so be safety.
You wouldn't be changing anything but just the word safety.
Yeah.
So, yes, and also, we wanted to be able to structure the, scoring criteria to the RTP. We want to be able to, tie the thread of how our RTP is affecting the rest of the programs that we do. So the call projects, the covered, or the CMP that we talked about, things like that. But not necessarily tied to that. And so if we want to plan to revisit the goals, that could also be separate from this process. If we want to say that that the mobility goal is safety, or if safety is just on its own. I think that, to Suzette's point, either way, that's not going to change how we're looking at calculating, looking at different ways to look at the high crash locations, or what safety countermeasures are being applied to these. The specific details on how this criteria will be set up. We'll go through the TAC process, and we have a workshop with them on Monday where we'll talk about more of the specific details on this. So even if we were to change it, I don't think it's going to change how this safety, even outside of any of the prioritization that we do, like the council is saying that that's our priority. So we will take that into consideration as we look at the scoring criteria.
So what you're saying is you can go ahead and do the scoring tonight on the criteria, ranking of the criteria tonight, and then go back and amend the goals later.
Yeah. Okay. And that would be kind of a separate process from this.
I know you only have about 15 more slides.
Okay, so want to get into the actual kind of workshopping, the prioritization. So we're going to use the Whole EV platform. So if we go to wholeev.com/NFRMPO 974.
Hold on, I say it again. That's kind of small up there.
Yeah, it's Whole EV, POLLEV.com/NFRMPO 974.
Just type that in there.
And just to be clear, this is only for council members to participate in this prioritization activity.
Oh, nice. Say it again.
wholeev.com/NFRMPO 974.
/NFRMPO 974.
And this, there too, if that's helpful.
2020, yeah.
wholeev.com/NFR.
Flash is going on.
Oh, I would just go to wholeev.com.
And then when you click on it, then it gives you a chance to.
Yeah, so just go to
put in that.
wholeev.com and then. And once you're there, you can do it.
Can you see this, what he's doing?
Yeah. Oh my God, I don't have enough hole, you dummy.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself.
Isn't it an illegal infected?
All right. So this is
No,
gonna
that's what I said when I
aggregate all of everybody's ranking on there. but what you'll want to do is it has those four goal areas, and you'll click or tap. If you're on the phone, you can just tap on the one and it'll give you an arrow to either bring it down or pull it up.
Can we go back to the? Are we starting?
Yeah, so this will be open and we'll continue.
Well, I'm still trying to get past the encrypted website.
God, I feel like I'm an old folks home. We're all trying to figure out our lives.
Somebody get them damn kids.
974.
I didn't drink my computer every day.
Yep, tough luck.
There you go.
All right.
You're on your own.
So now.
One and only
You should be able to like create your field name.
Now what I put here?
The NFRMPO section.
NFRMPO, MPO.
Is there a Wi-Fi in there?
Yes, there is. Just like mine here, yeah.
So,
It should just be Evan,
Yeah.
Evan's guest. I don't think there's a password.
okay, thank you.
I'm logged in the one that says Mark's cell phone.
That's how the whole city.
Some kid somewhere is trying to watch Netflix.
It's on my Wi-Fi hotspot.
All right. Has everybody put in their responses?
All right, old people, you got this figured out?
It's at the top.
Oh, I'm in.
Oh, thank you.
All right. So this is how I imagined that would play out, is that mobility has risen to the top. And so as we look at the specific criteria within that, that just helps us understand, what the council would like to prioritize when we look at these projects.
Okay.
So then I also have, within each of those areas, looking at some of the sub-criteria to understand the priorities. So so I have the major bullet points there that are like air quality, emissions reductions, economic development, and equity. So those will be the things that we'll look at prioritizing within regional health. So ranking those from most to least important within that category.
Okay.
And so the next question should be up there. One of the things that came out of regional health is one of the pieces of that definition is quality of life. And as we were looking through and thinking about data as it relates to quality of life, there's a lot of overlap between, access to jobs and, health from air quality and equity. And so felt that those three areas really encapsulated regional health overall. Another second, see if anything changes. All right. So the next one is mobility, so that being safety, network connectivity, so closing the gaps between facilities, infrastructure condition, and then system performance, so that would be the implementation of some of the congestion management strategies, things like that. So that next piece should be up now too.
I have a question that I don't think is, when I look at these answers, to me, they're not mutually exclusive, they're not separate priorities. Like, to me, our economic health is based on having clean air, clean water, a clean environment, that's why people want to live and move here. So I don't know how they're separate, and so I'm worried about if we're prioritizing what's important to us. Like, I look at how do we prioritize what gets co-benefits. We can spend $1 and get safety, asset management, a connected system, and managed demand, great. Like, I don't see them as different.
Yeah.
So how does that play out in your process?
So there, we'll take this information as far as priorities, and some of them, like safety is going to be a very specific, like looking at countermeasures and crash rates, things like that. Economic development, that'll be looking at access to high density job areas and activity centers, things like that. So is it providing and facilitating access to that? There is a lot of, that a lot of these will work together. And so there will be, some projects that do, hit really highly on all of these things. And so we'll get a full 100 points for that. And there are some projects that, might do well for, infrastructure condition, but is, not providing that type of access. So that's not gonna, fall into the same. So we're gonna take the, like this ranking to be able to look at the scoring criteria and assign points to it. So, under maybe the mobility section, you look at having 30 points for that whole section, and 90% of the points are going to safety, and that's just numbers off the top of my head.
Easy.
Yeah. But those that will be workshopped within the TAC on Monday, we'll take it back to our TAC next week, the week after. And then the results from those discussions we'll bring back to the council as well. All right. And so the next one is looking at multimodal. And so this is kind of the implementation of complete streets, which is a requirement for consideration for the MPO, but that can also result in VMT reductions. But this is going to be looking at, active transportation, building those, the construction of, bike and pedestrian facilities or transit projects. So go ahead and bring that one up as well. Through discussions I've had with staff about this one specifically, I think what this might actually look like is, for the points that are allocated to this category, if it's an active transportation project, it's providing those facilities, it'll get those points. If it's a transit project, it'll get those points. If it's a roadway project that includes other multimodal aspects, that would be the complete streets implementation, and it would get those points. So looking at, all the pieces of that project, and bringing that together.
Are people voting twice?
I did once, because I did it on my phone in here, but I closed my phone. So I'm only voting once.
You have two crowds.
It was on mobility, for safety, got hit twice.
I also should be able to see in the results when I look back at it later.
It says Johnny, it'll say Johnny twice. You will, one time. There'll be two Johnnies on one.
All right. There you go.
I'd say,
One Johnny's enough.
trust me, everyone will say that. I can't even argue.
All right. And then last one. Wanted to talk a little bit about this one before we go into the prioritization of it. So under operations, we have the ITS or operational improvements. This is also where the partnerships would come in. For previous calls for projects, we have allocated a certain amount of points if there are multiple financial contributors to a project. And if it meets a certain percentage threshold of the project or of the local match requirement. So that's where that would play in here. But then one of the things that we have discussed adding in is the idea of leveraging funding sources. So in previous calls, we've had projects, that have received HSIP funding and TAP funding. And so do we want to look at these projects that are utilizing multiple funding sources and allocate, points for that type of, funding mechanisms? If there's any thoughts on that, I will happily take those now. But the last piece of this would be the integration with local and regional plans. So we ask and require for the projects to align with the plans that we do. So the RTP, the active transportation plans, and things like that. But then also wanted to see if adding in the criteria or any points towards these priority corridors that we have discussed earlier. So do we want to say that projects on these corridors, I-25, US 34, US 85, on and on, get a certain amount of points to help bring them to the top? And that is, if that's not something that the council would like to see within this criteria, that is perfectly fine, we can pull that out. But just wanted to see if that was a way that the council wanted to be an implementation of the corridor priorities.
I think if it's their priorities, there are priorities.
Yes.
They should get more points.
Yes, I agree.
That shows unity and.
Otherwise, they're not the priority.
That was in what?
So, yeah, integration with regional plans. And that's not excluding projects that aren't on those corridors. There will be, I'm sure, plenty. We do require that roadway projects have to be on our regionally significant corridors. But that would just say that those projects just get that little bit extra bump in the criteria.
If I was in tie.
You flip a coin.
Well, there we go. This isn't necessarily tying us to anything specifically, so.
We tied Johnny both twice.
All good with that. I'd be able to.
We'll take this, prioritization to the workshop that we have on Monday and work through how that plays out as far as actual points. That is all I have. So just as a reminder, we will continue to have discussions about this in our upcoming months, but then we're planning on having the planning council approve the process at the August 3rd meeting or opening the call on August 4th.
Right, and I do want to put on the table to maybe amend the thing, not just get this done, but amend our goal.
Yeah.
Not change the criteria, not change what we did tonight, knowing that safety is mobility. Maybe we just,
Amend the word.
amend the word safety, comma, mobility, so it stays the same, but make it more safe.
Yeah, I think it just shows that that's really important, because clearly it popped up as something that's important to everyone, so I would like that.
Additional comments, questions, Fran Rose, please. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's move on. Council reports. Transportation Commission, Commissioner Brackett, please.
Okay, I'll be quick. So in terms of milestones from the past month, I want to say it was a great point to get to. Maybe, I don't know if Cecil's on the call, but the Transportation Commission did approve the agreements with CTIO to move forward with a TIFIA loan for North I-25, so that was a big step forward. Also, we had a great update for the full Transportation Commission on CDOT Region 4, and Rich Christie from Region 4 provided that, and it was a really great overview of all the different types of projects that are happening in Region 4, and I think was well received by the full commission. We also had a tour of the Operations Center, which is amazing in Golden. If you get a chance to tour that area, I would really encourage it. It's incredible to see the work that's being done there. And then I'll just put in a quick reminder that the CDOT 4P meetings are coming up over the next couple of months. So for Laramie County, Will County, if you can make sure people are able to get those invitations and participate in those meetings would be great. And then I'll just continue to put the invitation out. I'd be glad to meet with anyone from the local communities and talk about transportation needs in the area. That's all I have.
Thank you. CDOT Region 4 update, Heather.
Hi, good evening. A couple other things that came out of the commission. Just wanted to mention that CDOT did award, or the commission authorized $25 million to go to basically pothole repairs from we had a pretty substantial winter, as you all know. They also authorized another $8 million to go towards I-25, which I know you earlier talked about. It is a section from basically Mulberry up past Owl Canyon. We're going to be addressing both the northbound and southbound lanes. We're combining our resurfacing with some commission funds for a total about a $20 million project that's going to kick off here in May and probably it'll be this season and we'll go into next season, but we're trying to get that off of the poor system. Just a few other things to note on I-25. We have a ramp closure at 34. It's the southbound on-ramp. That's going to be happening Friday, May 12th through Monday, May 15th. So avoid that eastbound to southbound on-ramp that weekend. A lot of progress, a lot of concrete pavement's going to be going down on 6, 7, 8. Nearly 50% of the paving is going to be completed this year, or the remaining 50%, I should say. Most of the structures are complete. The tolling is one thing we keep getting asked. When is the tolling and testing going to start? It's going to happen at the end of this year or early next year. So we are looking at, substantial completion, and, with most of the work by the end of this calendar year, with tolling beginning in the spring of 24. We have secured the designer for segment 5. We had a kickoff meeting, and we are going full steam ahead. We're also working on the grant for segment 5. So that is good news. We also had a kickoff meeting on the 287 corridor study. That's from LaPorte, basically up to the Wyoming border, to really look at safety along that corridor. We have some money in the 10-year plan to address some needs there. And then I wanted to highlight Colorado 257, which is kind of right by our office there, right where 34 is, through the town of Windsor up to 392. We're going to be starting construction May 22nd, and that will go through middle of October. We're working in conjunction with Windsor's Eastman Park intersection project, as well as Greeley's installation of the new water line south of Crossroads. And there'll be a full roadway closure of 257 from September 12th to October 2nd, from Crossroads to 10th Street. Those are the main highlights. Let me know if you have any questions.
Questions for Heather, please. Thanks, Heather. Okay, staff report is written. CTIO office, the report there is written. I-25 Coalition will be very brief. Heard last evening from our congressional representatives about the process of congressionally directed spending earmarks. As we all know, it's actually moving forward to for several projects in this region. So in general, not a big fan of earmarks. If I get the money,
Well, we haven't been getting the money, so we gotta get
the money, we'll be okay, yeah. So that's the I-25 Coalition. NAPME, Commissioner Stevens, please.
The Avenue does not meet until May 25th.
Okay.
End of report.
Front Range Passenger Rail District, mayor and the councilor, please.
Mainly on our last meeting, we talked about a resolution for procurement. When we adopted, we ended up voting in favor of a procurement and purchasing policy. IT updates, that was, we have a new website rolled out, and we all are now transitioning into Front Range Passenger Rail, an additional email. So we'll have, Johnny and I will have FRPR emails as well.
I tried 52 times to get that to work and I couldn't get it to work.
Sounded old, Johnny. Get one of your kids down.
Johnny's gonna vote twice.
You can figure out how to vote twice, but you can't.
That's what I told him.
I haven't even looked into it yet, but I need to.
It's hard. It's not hard. It just, you can't see stuff and it just goes away and then it doesn't work. So I'm gonna meet with IT next week.
But that's all I have.
One of the things that I think we've been talking a lot about on the thing, and I'm on the planning council, and so is Will. Brent Karspek, sorry. And we're both on the planning council, which is really in charge of how the agreement, the development agreement's gonna go, and what's gonna be done and how it's gonna be done. I struggle a little bit. I don't know if we get all the data that we need. Sometimes we talk about things at the planning council the last couple of times, and I don't know if we really even have a plan of where we're going. And David, we get these little bits and pieces, but we don't know how it all fits together. I don't know if you feel the same.
Yeah, they pulled up one timeline, but it was just one slide of where they want to go. But I do agree, it is kind of like.
Because they will, the reason why I'm bringing it up is because they're gonna have meetings with everybody. Right? Where do you think the corridor should be? And there's been discussions with me and some folks from the city, Fort Collins and other folks. The 287, they're like, that was a discussion. Why is it going up? If I-25 is gonna have all the congestion and all the new improvements, and the corridor on 287 doesn't have a lot of growth potential, why is it going up 287? So there's some discussion there, but those are what they gotta go out and talk to the communities. And that's why I'm mentioning getting in front of the communities.
And they pulled data from their previous commission that can move on. But I agree. I think it's good to relook at it anyway. Thank you, Kevin.
So I guess my question around that is not only talking to the communities, but when and where is the public process?
These are online right now. Well, they did have one in person. I didn't go last, not this meeting, but last meeting. But there's a Zoom link on the website.
Yeah, no, I just mean will there be public outreach, like, are they doing a?
Yes, so I'm on planning council and the government affairs communication subcommittee, and we just talked about this last time, how we're gonna break this out, not just for elected officials, but for town halls, for the general public too.
Yeah.
So there's not a real, there's a want, or we know there's a need to do that, no plan yet.
Thank you.
That's okay. Questions for Mark or Johnny? Host council member reports. Mayor Clark, please.
All right, well, thank you all for coming out to Evans this evening, we really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the food, there's still a lot left, please take some with you. I'm gonna put Cody on the spot here real quick, and for those that have not met Cody since, he's back here, he's our city manager. He started with us back in January, he came from Augustus, Kansas, where he was the former assistant city manager there, so we're really happy to have him. I'll make mine kind of brief just for the sake of time, but we have a lot of infrastructure programs going on here in Evans. For those that aren't familiar, we have a hard closure on 37th Street there at 47th Avenue, where we're putting in a roundabout, thanks to CDOT and the NPO for that grant to help that fund that. That will be part of the 4-lane, structure that we're putting in throughout from 65th Avenue all the way to Highway 85. Hopefully that will be open late June, and the final project will complete sometime late in the summer. We also complete the 47th Avenue widening as well. We'll tie in the rest of the landscaping once the roundabout is complete. We're currently working on securing some land and designing for a new police station. 23rd Avenue there, we're finishing up the 4-lane widening on that. We're also doing a wastewater treatment facility master plan and expansion as well. We're looking at trails and open spaces. We got the Arrowhead open space. We're waiting completion of the 37th Street roundabout. We're expecting to do construction in the fall of 23 or spring of 24 for the Evans Ditch Trail and the Arrowhead Open Spaces. Landscaping work along Highway 85 to help tie in with the Quick Trip. We also have a McDonald's going in on the south west corner there as well. There's also a couple other retail developments that we're working with as well. Murphy Gas Station has also put in a bid and submitted a plan for along Highway 85 as well. We got a bunch of new residence development going on. We got the Liberty Trail there on 37th Street, 35th Avenue. As one homes doing about 700 new residential homes. Reserve at Crescent Cove is adding another 288 units. Saddleback of Tuscany, about 276 new apartments there to be built on the corner of 37th Street, 47th Avenue. So we have a lot going on. For those that were familiar with aren't familiar with the Russian Med Center, it used to be an old go-kart track, riding cages way back in the day. They've come in and redone that. So hopefully by Memorial Day weekend, we'll have some putt-putt, maybe some go-karts and everything there. Yeah, so we're all looking forward to that.
Let's have our next meeting there.
Yeah. I don't know whether I want golf clubs in this round.
I'll think of go-karts and crash my wall golf.
Yes.
Let's have golf courses and invite our friends from Rack here again.
We got Titan Knit Brewery that we're hoping that they're doing a production here. We're hoping that they're gonna add a tap room. Hunters Reserves, a brand new little shopping center on 37th Street, 35th. Nutty Pine, which was on 35th Avenue, relocated into their new facility there. It looks great. It's gonna be a Domino's Pizza. Moffett Glass is moving from Greeley over here to where the Great Outdoors RV place used to be. Dollar General is fully open, and right now we're working on a lot of land use code updates and everything to get rid of a lot of the fluff to promote some economic growth in the community.
Awesome.
That's all I got.
So you're busy?
That's all.
We're busy. We're busy.
Thank you.
That's all.
for,
Hey, congratulations. Welcome to.
Thank you for your hospitality, Mayor. Cody, if you want to come again, you're always welcome. They usually last about another 2 hours. Okay, there's nothing that fit to come before the board. We will stand adjourned, and we'll see you next month.
Next month is where?
Next month is in,
It's in Joey City. Oh, I got it?
Yeah, you got it.
I'm out of town. Oh, well. We're gonna do it at the police station, I promise.
Maybe it'll snow again. Are you?
So would you, yeah.
Have where we go, please not.